Hey guys, how have you been? How are you all feeling? I'm feeling much better, thank you. And like John Wick, I'm thinking I'm back. Right quick, I want to shout out my day ones, like Tony Mann, Jasper Finn, Jervis Horton, and my cousin John. Thank you guys for sticking with me through my ups and downs. Shout out to the Drive-In Mutants. And last but not least, shout out to my Latchkey kids. Now let's talk about some horror movies. In my opinion, slave movies have always been horror movies. 12 Years a Slave, horror movie. Roots, horror miniseries. I don't see how people can just watch these and not see the horror in them. The first thing I want to say about this movie is, unfortunately, it is not based off of Octavia Butler's Kindred. I think if it was, it would have been a more interesting movie. At first, when I saw the teaser, I got excited because I thought, oh, maybe this is a movie based off of Kindred. But then when the complete trailer came out, that's when I found out that it was not based off of Kindred. By the way, Octavia Butler is a black female horror sci-fi novelist. If you haven't read any of her books, today's a good day to start. Read some Octavia Butler. That said, you have to be in the right frame of mind to even watch a movie about American chattel slavery. If you feel that you're not in the right state of mind, there is no shame in protecting your energy and not watching this, especially during this extremely psychologically exhausting year. I actually think that slavery movies or images shouldn't even be shown to children until 9th or 10th grade. I feel that showing images of people being brutalized and tortured to children is traumatic, especially so for the children that look like the people who were being brutalized. See that Freudian slip? I'm gonna leave that in because it's kind of true. But anyways, I don't think you should show these things to children during their early developmental stage, because you got to give them a chance to love themselves before you start to break them down. Can you imagine showing pictures of the atrocities in Auschwitz to 8 and 9-year-olds? Back to the movie review, but I couldn't help but have these thoughts as I was watching this movie. People may be a little bit disappointed that there is no supernatural aspect because the trailer almost made it seem as if there were. I don't think that it was necessary for the story to be told. A few things about this movie. There were men in it that were chanting blood and soil, and it like almost sent a chill down my spine because it reminded me of those, I was this close to calling them gentlemen, those people who were chanting blood and soil with the tiki torches in Charlottesville. That's what it well, I'm sure that's what you're meant to think of when you see that scene. It's still creepy, no less. Another part of this movie that stuck out to me was a scene when an enslaved woman is talking to Janelle Monáe's character, and she says a very poignant line that it just struck me. She says to her, "You're not a leader, you're a talker." And it struck me because any day of the week you can turn on YouTube and see hundreds of armchair revolutionaries. The thing about them is that the ideas they present are no longer revolutionary. They were revolutionary when W.E.B. Du Bois wrote about them. They were revolutionary when James Baldwin wrote about them. But the worst part is that oftentimes they present these ideas to people who don't read. So they're almost tricking people into thinking that these are their ideas because they don't quote the source. Then they ask for donations. So they're not leaders, they're just talkers. It's a hustle. I don't know if the writer of this movie, whether that was their intended message, but that's what it made me think of that line. In the trailer and in a lot of the write-ups about this movie, they kept comparing it to Jordan Peele's movies, and some people were wondering whether it was going to be the next Get Out. But when I watched this movie, I felt like it reminded me more of an M. Night Shyamalan movie than a Jordan Peele movie. And if you've seen a lot of M. Night Shyamalan, there's one specific movie that this movie reminds me of, and if you've seen that movie, then you know what I'm talking about. The acting was good on everyone's part. Janelle Monáe is great in everything that she's in. I even watched both seasons of Homecoming just because she was in season 2, and I'm the type of person that I can't really start a show on just the second season. I like to see the first season to see how it all began, but that show was slow as molasses, but I watched it anyways because Janelle Monáe was on it. I also love Gabourey Sidibe. She was on my very favorite season of American Horror Story, Coven. I think my second favorite probably would be Freak Show, although the first season was really good too. Murder House was pretty good. Anyways, that's another video for another day. She does light up any scene that she's in, and that's what I really like about her. But I'm gonna need a millennial to explain to me why she was so harsh on the gentleman that brought her a drink. I mean, maybe I'm an old lady, but back in my day, I would have just said thank you. But then I'm used to going out and blending in with the wall, so the thought of someone sending over a drink is so foreign a concept, I can only imagine what that would be like. But for those that have had that happen, were you rude about it, or did you just say thank you, or how did you handle that? The part of this movie that I liked the best was obviously the middle section, because I mean, I don't want to watch chattel slavery. As my sister puts it, I don't eat popcorn to my people suffering. But I really liked Veronica's regular life, her everyday life, how everything looked in her world, her friends. That was more interesting, looking at the microaggressions that we go through very frequently. That's more interesting to me to see on screen than, you know, the ultimate fate that befell her character. A really great thing about this movie is the cinematography. It is breathtaking. There are some gorgeous shots. Every shot looked like a work of art that you could frame and hang up in a gallery. The ending was a little bit anticlimactic for me. I think it's because as certain people got their comeuppance, it wasn't as cathartic as it should have been. I'll give you an example of why it wasn't cathartic. When you watch First Blood and you see John Rambo being denigrated, discriminated against, verbally abused, physically abused, tortured, locked up, that's the first 30-40 minutes of the movie. So when he finally gets to turn the tables, people explode. I think a few people got their throats slashed, if I remember. It's been a long time since I've watched that movie. People get messed up gruesomely, and I enjoyed that. That's what I want to see here. I want to see the Confederates get messed up, and I mean they sort of did, but it wasn't brutal enough for me. Like, could you imagine if you watched First Blood and when John Rambo gets his revenge, everyone just kind of gets shot and dies off camera? Everyone would say, oh, well, that movie sucked. You would, but you enjoyed because when he turns the tables and is able to do what he does to the people that tortured him, it feels good to see them get messed up. I can't for the life of me see why someone would put all this time and energy into the details of the first 40 minutes of showing people being enslaved, and then the tormentors, you just show them get their comeuppance in the last 10 to 12 minutes of the movie, and it's not even that good. Show the race is getting messed up. Like, that would be the point. Like, if you're not going to be as deep as you think you are, which is another issue I have, but I'll come back to that, show some people getting messed up. That's what I want to see. If they thought they were educating somebody, they weren't. We all know about slavery. It's shoved down our throat every year. Every school child in America, well, let me take that back, because our educational system is not uniform across the board. So let's say 60 to 7% of school children get taught about slavery like yearly, like during Black History Month. At least when I was in school, Black History Month comes around and it's like, oh, there was slavery, and then Martin Luther King, and then Obama. There you go. that's Black. let me stop. But anyways, Hollywood never lets us forget. I mean, black people been on this earth for like thousands and thousands of years, but they only want to make movies about like the last 250 to 400 years. That's interesting. While this movie was done competently with regards to its aesthetics, it's kind of pointless. There's literally no reason to sit through slave torture, especially if you have enslaved people in your ancestry. At least in my family, I have slave stories, I have lynching stories, I have stories about what went down on the reservation that aren't that great. I don't need to watch this, especially without the benefit of seeing some racists get their heads blown off. I see no need for our psyche to be re-victimized for entertainment without even the benefit of seeing some racists meet a gory end. I deadass don't even see the reason for making this movie other than to capitalize off of the success of Get Out. And they really tried to be deep. Like, they thought they were so deep with this. We're in a post-Parasite world. I'm gonna need you to write 8 more drafts and make your movie so I have to watch it 3 times for me to get every level of the deepness. The writing for this movie just wasn't complex enough for it to be intriguing. And the action wasn't good enough to make up for the lack of writing. P.D. Wheatstraw is a deeper movie than this, and I should review P.D. Wheatstraw sometime this month. I love that movie. That is a social commentary movie that is fun. And that's where my notes end, so that's where I'll finish talking about Antebellum. I'll be back in a minute to talk about Spiral. I paired Spiral with Antebellum because it's the other movie that's been compared to Get Out. Spiral was an interesting watch. There's some things I really liked about it and some things that I thought were a little bit cliche. This movie starts out, or I should say the beginning scene of the movie starts in 1983 with our main character Malik experiencing an extreme trauma. And then it jumps to 1995. I wanted to make that clear because I think some of the tweets I was seeing about this movie were confused about certain things in the movie. Like, I actually saw someone comment that they moved a little girl out into the woods and she had no access to social media, and I saw people explain to that person it was 1995. We didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Instagram, we darn sure didn't have TikTok. The loading speed, I wish I could show, if I can find a GIF of a photograph loading. That's how the internet was in 1995. You might wait 15 minutes to see a photograph if you had dial-up. I mean, I don't think everyone had, when did high-speed internet become a thing? Maybe 98, 99? AOL Messenger didn't even come out until 1997, I believe. So we didn't even have like the chat rooms on AOL Messenger. We did have forums, internet forums, where they were usually subject specific and then you could message each other on forums. And then the funny thing is, there is an app that looks like an internet forum. I was on it the other day and it kept on reminding me of something in the 90s and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it was the way the internet looked like in the 90s, and it's Discord. Whenever I go on Discord, I'm like, this looks like a site that was built in 1998. So anyways, back to the movie. It takes place in 1995. So you're going to see VHS tapes. You're going to see a computer with a big body screen. They didn't show him using dial-up internet though when he was on a computer. They did show him going to the library, which is cool. But let me get back on track. Malik is now has a partner. At first I was going to say married, but I don't know their status because in 95 I don't know whether same-sex marriage was legal, so I'm just going to say partner for the duration of this video. So he has a partner and a stepdaughter. The family has just moved from the city to the country, and this being a horror movie, that's when the shenanigans begin. First, their home is vandalized with a homophobic slur being written on the inside of the living room wall, and unfortunately Malik is the one to walk in and see this, which is kind of doubly bad for him because he's already experienced a trauma earlier in his life, and then this is kind of re-traumatizing him. The thing I don't get is he doesn't tell his partner about it, which was really bugging me because it causes unnecessary misunderstandings in this movie. One line his partner said that really bugged the heck out of me is, "You know what we do in the suburbs? We unlock doors." Then why are there gated communities, sir. As a matter of fact, the wealthier a place you live in, and the more expensive your home, the more likely you're going to have security. Security cameras, security dogs, security people. I don't know where you're getting this. Even in 1995, in the 80s, I'll give you a good example. I used to live in South Glastonbury, Connecticut, and this was around 1984. And there was a rash of robberies where whenever a family would go on vacation, someone or a couple people who they'd be dressed like movers, they'd pull a truck up to the house and just empty the house out, and no one would call the police because they would just see movers in a moving truck thinking, oh, well, those people are just moving. And that's kind of part of the reason why people started getting house sitters, so that even if they went on vacation, someone would be home. So this whole, you're safer in the suburbs, I mean, maybe you're safer from, you know, catching a stray bullet from a drive-by, but there's still home invasions. There's still everything that goes on in the city goes on in the suburbs. Like in the city, somebody's parent might be a crackhead. In the suburbs, somebody's parent might be taking prescription meds and drinking all day. Same crack behavior though. You're just using, you might be using more expensive drugs, but they're still drugs. So I don't like how in the US or I should say in US movies, not US people, but in US movies, they try to present the suburbs as this super safe haven where nothing happens. But at the same time, you have movies like The Girl Next Door, which was about a true story where this woman had this girl in the basement and she was torturing her in the suburbs. Anyway, now that I'm done with my suburban rant. Malik was aggravating me this whole movie because every little thing that was happening, he was not telling his partner. And I do know that there was some basis of him having, they tried to make it seem like, oh, well, his partner may not believe him because of his mental issues. But they present him as a person who had been traumatized, not a person who maybe had suffered from schizophrenia or another mental disorder that would cloud someone's, how do I describe this best? A mental disorder that affects someone being able to determine what's reality and what isn't reality. They didn't present him as a person who has that type of issue. They presented him as a person who has anxiety. And anxiety typically doesn't make you hallucinate. So I just feel like it was a case of bad writing. They could have fleshed that out more, and then things would have made more sense if they wrote them in a way that would make sense. Suffice it to say that there was a lot of things happening and it was very aggravating that he didn't tell his partner about any of it. And I feel like, what's the purpose of this person being your partner if you can't talk to them, you can't tell them how you're feeling, what you're going through, or what you've seen? Another thing that bugged me in the movie was when the daughter knocked on the bathroom door saying that she needed to use a shower. Did you see the size of that house? Who would build a house that size with only one full bathroom in it? But that's just an architectural nitpick. At one point, you find something very questionable in his garage, but I mean, I was going to say, does he tell the partner? I mean, you know he's not going to tell his partner. So what's the point? Between this and finding out some information about another couple, he finally decides to investigate, but he does it by himself. Then, I shit you not, when he's investigating, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to drop one major spoiler. A ghost girl hands him videotapes, like out of the blue. Like there was no inkling of anything else supernatural at all. It was just a plot device for how he got the videotapes, I guess. Or maybe we're supposed to think that he is hallucinating. I don't know. This, like I said, the writing was a little bit sloppy. There was a part of the movie that was very heartbreaking to me, and that was when he gets into it with his partner over something he was set up about. And it was heartbreaking when his partner kicked him out, because when you know during that time period, and it actually still happens today with some people in the gay community, if their families reject them and kick them out, they don't have, like if his family rejected him and kicked him out, he had no place to go when his partner kicks him out. And I thought when he was in the car, that was really, really heartbreaking. Now let's talk about what I did like. I liked the reveal, and I like how his partner discovered a certain thing. I also liked how this movie looked. It looked pretty good. The lighting was good, camera work was good, editing was good. Aesthetically, it was a good looking movie. And what effects there were very good. I also liked how it delved into the intersectionality between homophobia and racism. Malik, as a black gay man, deals with certain issues that his white partner does not. Like, for example, being mistaken for the gardener instead of the homeowner. Add to that, he's dealing with either a mental health issue or mood disturbances, so that adds another layer of intersectionality between ableism, homophobia, and racism. We see him taking psychiatric meds. We're never told what they are. There's not even a close-up on, or that I can recall. I could be mistaken, but I didn't see a close-up on a bottle, because sometimes if there's like a close-up on a bottle, it'll say like lithium or something, and you can kind of look up what lithium is for. In my case, I don't have to look up what lithium is for. I know, like I said, they did not specify. I should say they did not specify, and they didn't give us enough contextual clues, because I don't think a movie has to out and out tell you everything, but at least provide contextual clues so that the audience can ascertain on their own what you're talking about. I'm going to say the same thing about this movie as I said about Antebellum. We're in a post-Parasite world. If I don't have to watch your movie 3 times to get all the layers, I'm not going to be happy. Go back. Not saying this was not a good script. I'm just saying that this felt like a first draft. Go back, rewrite it again, rewrite it another time until you have dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and really fleshed everything out. That said, I know as a cishet woman, I'm not going to get all of the subtext. If you're a gay male and you watched this movie and you took more away from it than I did, I would love to hear your comments, because I mean, there's stuff I can miss. I'm willing to admit that. The ending was very interesting. I actually liked how it ended. I think if you can get past the movie having a protagonist that does the exact opposite of what you should do in a horror movie, then you might really enjoy this movie. The premise, the plot, and the resolution were good starting points. They are very promising, and I can see why this was compared to Jordan Peele's Get Out. I would also compare this a little bit to an Ari Aster film. Like both of his past films, I can see some similarities to Hereditary, and I can see some similarities to Midsommar. I don't think this was as creepy or as scary as either of those directors' films. I watched it alone in the dark by myself and had no problem just going to sleep. Which I can't say the same for Hereditary. Like, that creeped me out for a couple days. The trailer for us creeped me out more than the actual movie did, but it was still a little bit creepy. I think there's something about people with no eyebrows. No disrespect to actual people that have no eyebrows, but there's just something about the makeup that was done on the tethered that creeps me out. That said, everyone is different. This actually might creep you out. Both movies I reviewed tonight center around trauma visited upon marginalized communities. And like I said for Antebellum, I'll say the same thing for Spiral. If you're not in the right frame of mind or emotional state to view this movie, there's no shame in that. Protect your energy, protect your spirit, protect your emotional health, your psychological health, all of that. I actually put off viewing both of these movies for weeks until I was in the right frame of mind to actually view them and review them. To sum it up, I would say that Antebellum was the higher budget, better looking movie. Like I said, it's absolutely gorgeous, the cinematography, but Spiral had the better story. Even though I criticized some of the story elements, I think Spiral started off with a better story, and they just didn't get the chance to flesh it out as well as they could have. Neither film is horrible. Neither film is excellent. They're both middle ground. If I had to recommend one, I would probably say Spiral is a bit more interesting than Antebellum to me. But again, that's just my opinion. And like I usually say, don't take my word for it. Just because I loved a movie doesn't mean you won't hate it. And just because I hate a movie doesn't mean you won't love it. Did you see either one of these movies? Do you plan on seeing either one of these movies? And if you did, let me know what you thought of them in the comments.